Every country tells stories about itself. Some are inspiring, some are incomplete, and some are deliberately left out. On this show, we pull back the curtain, question the narratives, and explore the people, policies, and history shaping the America that we live in today. No spin, no filters, just honest conversation. I'm your host, Breezy, with my co-host, Des the Diva, and this is America, No Filter.
The two are both pipe bowls that we found in the South Yard. And I talked about both of these with you while we were at Montpelier because they're part of the Mere Distinction of Color exhibition. One of them, so a pipe bowl, just red.
I'm like, Phil does it.
Yep.
Right, I'm like, in the audience on what a pipe bowl is.
Yeah. Yep. It's okay. This is what I do for a living. So smoking pipes was a very popular way that people smoked tobacco, right? And so a pipe bowl were made out of clay, and they would have a long clay stem, and then the bowl would also be made of clay, right? So you would put the tobacco in pipe, right? The thing about that type of pipe is they break a lot. So we find them a lot in archaeology. We find the stems that are broken, and then we find the bowls. So the stems are really exciting for archaeologists because some archaeologists a long time ago discovered that the diameter of the hole in the stem changes through time. The diameter of it gets bigger and smaller, and it correlates to the cost of tobacco, right? Because the smaller your hole, the less tobacco you're going to be using. And if tobacco is expensive, you want a smaller hole so you can make your tobacco last longer, right? So for archaeologists, we love artifacts that tell time, where we can say, oh, this artifact is from this date, and this artifact is from this date. It's why we love ceramics. Ceramics are
I was going to say, there's a lot of that.
And they have decoration on them, right? So they break, people throw them away, but they don't disintegrate, right? The broken pieces stay intact. And then they have decorations on them, and then we can figure out what kind of decoration correlates to what period of time. So pipe stems are really exciting because we figured out how to tell time with them. So if you go to an archaeology lab, you'll see all these pieces of wood with drill bits sticking out of them. And that's because archaeologists will put the pipe stems over the drill bits, and that's how we measure the diameter.
Let's see how old it is and what period it came from.
So, but the bowls are really often really exciting because sometimes they're decorated. I mean, they have decoration on them, iconography, symbols, all kinds of stuff. So these two pipe bowls are both decorated. So one of them was found by descendants on an excavation, and this pipe bowl had the Masonic symbol on it, the angle and the compass symbol. And they brought it over to us, and we're like, look at this amazing thing we found. And I was like, that is amazing. And we looked at it, and we had the conversation that started between me and the staff members, all white people, was like, oh, we didn't think Madison was a Mason. He says he's not a Mason. So it's weird that we found this pipe bowl here with a Masonic symbol on it. And Leontini Clay Peck, a descendant who is the woman who found the object, looked at me and said, didn't you just, because literally that morning I gave them a lecture about context. And she was like, didn't you just give us a lecture about context? I was like, I did. And she's like, and we just found this in the South Yard. I was like, this is a good point, Leontini.
You probably belong to, Terry.
Right. Well, my lived experience did not introduce me to the Prince Hall Freemasons, right? Until that day, when Leontini told me about how her husband is a Freemason and her father was a Freemason and her grandfather was a Freemason, right? And it made that artifact go from cool to amazing. Because that information, now that pipe bowl doesn't belong to Madison, that belongs to an enslaved individual. So let's go learn about the Prince Hall Freemasons, which is what I then went and did. Who were they? What was their story? What would it have meant for an enslaved Black person to have a pipe bowl with this symbol on it? So I don't know if the person who owned it was a member of the Prince Hall Freemasons or not. It's possible. It seems unlikely, but it's possible. But then, like, I don't play for the Chicago Cubs, but I wear Chicago Cubs baseball hat. Right. And everyone just like made decisions about the kind of person I am because I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. Right. You all just learned something about me. Right. Like I'm good at dealing with failure and disappointment.
I'm in Atlanta, so we are.
Well, yeah, you don't know what that is because you had the 90s after you stole Greg Maddux
We did
from
have
us.
the 90s. You are correct. You
I-
are. We
which
did
is-
have a
which was
good
my
decade.
prime baseball fandom period. I digress. The point being, right, that just because you own something that has a symbol on it doesn't mean you are a member of that thing, but it does mean that you probably associate with that organization or with
Right.
those ideals, right? What it's trying to espouse. And when you look at who the Freemasons are, there's just hugely involved in the Underground Railroad, deeply committed to ideas of justice and equality. Right, the Freemasons are an organization that in theory is about claiming craft and skill. Right, you're supposed to actually be a Mason. Right, that's the original idea. Right, I don't know if any of them actually are anymore, but but when you're an enslaved person whose skill is being used without compensation for someone else by force, right, that kind of takes that skill and takes it away from you. Being a Freemason says no, right, that's mine. Right, like I am the skilled artisan. I'm the person who has this skill and this talent. And then it's a fraternal organization. And one of the main ways that enslavers maintain control over men, over Black men, is through a process of emasculating them. Right? We're going to take all the things that men are, that we are told we're supposed to do. Right? We're supposed to protect our families. Right? We're supposed to bring home the paycheck. Right? Like all these things we're supposed to do as men. Right? That our cultures tell us that we're supposed to do. And enslavers are saying, no, we're not going to pay you for your work. You can't support your family. We're going to sell your daughter. I'm going to rape your wife, right? All these things that are chipping away at what it means to be a man are being taken. So to affiliate yourself with an organization that is a fraternal organization, right? That has a connection to a fuller definition of manhood, right? I think that's really meaningful as well when we think about this. The Prince Hall Freemasons also, historians have written about them as being the first example of African American self-government in the United States. They were founded in 1789 when Prince Hall himself, a free African American in the North, tried to join the Freemasons, was told no. So he went to Ireland and got a charter from Ireland to start a chapter and came back to Boston, where he started the first African lodge in the United States. And that's a governmental organization, right? They've got president, treasurer, right? Like all those things. It's an organization that governs itself, right? So when we think about that pipe bowl, then in the context of a lot of the other stuff we talk about at Montpelier, right? The Constitution, what is government, what is self-government, what is democracy, all of those things, right? Here you have someone who does not have those rights, an enslaved person, associating themselves with an organization that very much is all about community, political engagement, right? Agency, manhood, craft, right? So that's from a pipe bowl.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's from a pipe bowl and Leontini Clay Peck, right? My job is just to connect those dots, and wouldn't have known any of that if Leontini had not been out there, or it would have taken me a lot longer to figure out, right? So the other one is the pipe bowl that was found in a slave quarter with Lady Liberty on it.
Yes, that's the one I remember.
Where it's the profile, it's like what you see on coin, the profile of Lady Liberty, and she's wearing this cap that has the word liberty written on it, right? So
freedom.
Yeah, I mean, here you've got an enslaved African American
pipe
staring at the Lady Liberty all day,
right?
Smoking his Liberty pipe while he's owned by like the world's foremost authority and political theory nut on liberty, right? Being James Madison. So the connections there are probably pretty obvious, but what I love about these two pipe bowls is it gets to what people are thinking. It's what's happening inside their minds and in their hearts, as opposed to like, okay, here's the tools they're using, right? Here's the dishes they're eating off of. That's neat, but it's a whole other thing when you can be like, what are they thinking about? What do they believe in?
I was about
to say
beliefs. Yeah.
Right? Like what are they striving for? Right? And like you just can't get much more clear than like if you're smoking a pipe bowl that says the word liberty on it, that's probably what you're after.
Yeah.
Right. That's probably something you believe pretty strongly in. And the cap that Lady Liberty wears, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it is the cap that freed slaves would be given in ancient Rome or ancient Greece. I can't remember which.
Oh,
But
wow.
when they were freed, they were given this cap that they would wear. Like that's
Yeah.
what's on her head. Like you see it sometimes she's holding a spear and the cap is over the spear. Like it is literally a symbol of emancipation.
Yes, that's what I thought about.
Yep.
And when we were on the tour and you were talking about it, and I was like, wow, this is so these enslaved people have, or this one person has this pipe that is literally a freedom pipe
Yeah.
that he is smoking while he is enslaved and not given the same freedom that this is talking about. He doesn't
Yep.
have access to. I was like, that was
But he wants it, right?
right. Absolutely.
Or she.
Absolutely. Right. Or
Both
she.
belong to a woman.
True. Because anybody could have been smoking.
Everyone was smoking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So those are the two that always that they just get to. We're like 2, 3, 4 levels deeper, and particularly valuable at Montpelier because what the mission of that place is about the Constitution, right? Good, bad, and ugly, and so to be able to point to concrete physical evidence that the people who were enslaved at Montpelier were deeply interested in not just the idea of like it would be nice to be free, but like the political ideas, right? And that are the conversations that are happening at Madison's dinner table, right? A table that is being served by enslaved African Americans, with food being cooked by enslaved African Americans, in a room that is cleaned by enslaved African Americans, right? This is what the nation was talking about in the late 18th century and early 19th century, and it was also what the enslaved people were talking about, and in these ways, right? I mean, Gabriel's Rebellion that happens in almost happens in 1801 in Richmond, right? Same time period. Liberty or death, or death or liberty is the slogan for that, right? Which is exactly what Patrick Henry said 25 years earlier, right? Give me liberty or give me death.
Absolutely.
In a church that was literally up the street from where Gabriel worked as a blacksmith, right? So like these ideas, right? We attribute these ideas to people like Madison, who certainly had the ideas. Like that's not saying he doesn't.
Right.
But a whole lot of other people had these ideas too, right? They just weren't given the means to articulate them in the ways that Madison was able to, or to put them fully into action by creating a government.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it fits. I'm just saying, like it fits the narrative of what we want, some of the broader themes that are being talked about at Montpelier.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that one of the things that really shocked me was the quotes from, I want to say, David Walker. Is it Dave? I, in my mind, I was like, when was this written? Was this like written last week? But I just did not see it felt so now that I was like, wait a minute, this happened before. Like, wait a minute. I mean, it just really did not grasp how learned some African Americans were at that time. Because I was like, well, I mean, this sounds like he could have wrote this last week. Like this sounds very recent. And then find out that it was written in what, 1829. I was like, whoa. I was blown away. And then I went down a rabbit hole and I was like, okay, well, who's David Walker? And why don't I know more about him?
He was a Prince Hall Freemason.
Well, see, I did not know that part, but I did know that.
Tie a bow on that one.
That his father was free, but his mom was enslaved. I think that was one of the rules too, is if your mother was enslaved and you were born to your mother, then you were automatically a slave. But if she was free, you were free.
Yeah,
so,
well,
in principle,
a lot of Thomas Jefferson's kids would have been free.
Would have, yeah, but Thomas Jefferson. That's another interesting.
I don't want to talk about him at all.
Like, we don't have all night. But I think one of the other things that really stood out to me before we even started this archaeological dig was the background that you gave us on the blacksmiths, and then how far reaching the people would travel to get service by this particular blacksmith at this particular plantation. It was really mind blowing to me that people would come far and wide, and that just spoke to the skill. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So some of that also had to do with the period of time that this is happening, right? So you're talking about Moses, the
Hmm.
blacksmith from the 18th century. The Madison family is very early to Orange County, right? This is Western Virginia, so then the Piedmont region. So they are early settlers, European colonizers, right? In this period. And so when they set up shop with and James Madison Sr., so it's Ambrose and Francis are the first Madisons there. And then their son James starts the blacksmith operation that's run by enslaved blacksmiths. So they're there, and then the rest of the European colonizers come, right? So, and they don't have blacksmith shops, right? So some of this is, the initial starting there is this is the only place in town
Right, right,
you
right.
can
Yeah.
get any of the iron works that we need. And iron is like the plastic of, right? Like they used iron to, like, it's like we need to attach a thisy to a that, and it's you make it out of iron,
Right.
right? Like, and but then yes, they continue to use Moses and his skills, and yeah, the Montpelier is doing some really really fascinating research, looking at account books and connecting, mapping the locations of all these different plantations and who's using what blacksmith where. That's not work that I've been, honestly, I was exposed to that work at the same time that you were.
Okay.
So Matt's talked to me a little bit about it, but yeah, it's a really neat, fascinating way to use maps and material culture and historical records, right? None of that has to do with, they're not digging in the dirt at all for that research. They're looking at historical documents archaeologically, right? They're thinking about them in an archaeological way, looking at the material objects and connecting them.
No,
But
absolutely.
yeah, no, it's blacksmiths were such an important, that's really in West African cultures, really important person in your community. A community leader was the blacksmith, and that tradition held up here. That's another thing that came across the ocean. And if you think about, right, so like, what does that mean that all these products are being crafted by Moses at Montpelier? That's right, feeding the rest of this region with, well, that's not just the economic network of where goods are going.
Hmm.
It's a social and political network, not just for the Madisons,
But for the
but for
enslaved
the
as well.
enslaved, right? Because the people who are coming to pick that stuff up and taking it back to their plantations, right? Those were enslaved laborers, right? They're coming to that blacksmith shop, right? Which is where they're going to get news, right? Moses is going to be passing like information, notes, all kinds of, right? You don't like, I don't know about you, but like I'm the kind of person that I go to the same coffee shop and I get to know everybody at the coffee shop. And I like going there because I know I'm going to bump into someone I know and then I'm going to learn something. I don't just go there to drink the coffee. Like that's actually the last thing I'm there for, right?
The social
Right.
aspect of
I'm
it.
there because I want to see people and learn about them, right? That's what's happening at these blacksmith shops. Information's being passed, right? And at Montpelier, particularly when Madison is, then you're getting information about the whole world
Mhm.
going through that blacksmith, right? Because Peter Jennings is like, here's what I overheard at the dinner table when Jefferson was over, right? And we pass that to the blacksmith. Blacksmith is going to pass that, right, through the whole region, and that information is going to get passed around, right? So these are political networks, they're social networks, right? People who have families on different plantations, right? That's the blacksmith shop becomes this hub for this information. The second
Yeah.
blacksmith shop was on a major road in Montpelier.
Yeah. And
Everyone
Peter
must have
Jennings, for context, was an enslaved man who worked in the house. So he was
yes,
kind of
yep,
a butler, I guess would be
yep.
his
James Madison's like primary manservant. It's like,
so he's a fly on the wall, if you will, and gets to hear a lot of these conversations as he is visible when he needs to be and invisible when he needs to be. So yeah,
yep.
he's able to pass a lot of information. So speaking to descendants, and I know we talked about it a little bit briefly. Why do you feel like descendant engagement is so important? You were saying that this is really the only president's home that even does this. So why do you think that's so important?
The only president's home that has descendants
Right.
nominating half of the board.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
There's lots of places that are doing descendant engagement and
Okay.
collaborating with descendants.
Thank you for that distinction.
I mean, it's important for so many reasons, right? I'm a white guy. I don't know if that's, I know, crazy.
Terry, you're gonna reveal that on the show. Truth bomb, everybody. Terry's a white guy.
Shut it off. And so my lived experience is my lived experience, right? So it's going to come along with, there's like I've built the skill sets I built through a lot of privilege and a lot of hard work, right? That's got me to where I am, and is how I got the knowledge that I have. And it's how I learned how to do archaeology. So I sort of think that I have a somewhat unique set of skills, and I'm interested in how I can use those in service, right? So that's what I bring to the table, right? Is that skill set, the ability I can dig stuff out of the ground and I can tell you about it. And like I said at the very beginning, right, I'm in this because I like working in a team, right? And I know that I have blind spots because I have not lived everyone's experience, right? It's impossible for me to know everyone's experience, both the people in the past and the people in the present. And so the more people that I work with, right, who have more life experience, other life experiences, that's going to bring more information to the table. So when we're looking at information and what we're finding in the ground, the more people that we engage with, the better answers we can get, right? The more robust the result and a more accurate and interesting history we're going to be able to tell. So that's one piece of why it's really important. The other piece is I can come up with a million research questions, and they're all going to be from my perspective and my lived experience, right? I've worked with lots of descendants, so I'm getting there's some patterns as to the things that people are interested in, but right, I want to know what you want to know. And right, that's how I use my skill set in service, right? It's what questions do you have? Right? I have a meeting in a couple weeks with some descendants who are working with descendants of a plantation owner, and we're going to talk about what questions they have, right? I can tell them all the different archaeological methods, right? But the methods, the approach that we take is dependent on what the questions are, right?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that research questions? I know you mentioned that to us,
Yeah.
but essentially, asking a specific question that you want to find the answer to, and that kind of informs,
Everything.
yeah, what you do, where you go, where you dig, what you're looking for, that kind of thing.
Archaeology does, I think we're a science. We're definitely humanities also. We're a social science, right? So we ask research questions and we test those questions, which means we have to collect data, right? So I just think about it as a circle. You ask your question, that informs what your methods are, right? And then you collect your data, and that gives you your data set, and then you analyze the data, and that should answer your questions. And then we'll also generate more questions, and then you just keep doing it. So yeah, if you're, and there's, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of research questions, right? Which are the who, what, where, when, why, how, right? The same questions we learned about in middle school, right? And in archaeology, we're really good at the where, right? Where was the thing happening, right? We're good at identifying the locations of stuff. We're good at the when, based on what artifacts we find, right? Tells us when that thing happened. It gets we're pretty good at the what was happening at this location, right? Oh, that's a domestic site. Oh, that's a kitchen. Oh, that's a blacksmith shop, right? And usually pretty good at the who, right? Who is doing those things. And then the why and the how, you need to have answered those other questions in order to ask why and how, right? I can't ask why were these buildings located in this place in relationship to the mansion if I don't know where the buildings are, right? And things like that. So our descendants gave us really broad sort of themes as opposed to specific questions, right? We really want you to explore the humanity of our ancestors, and we really want you to connect past to present, right? Slavery, the story cannot stop in 1865. It needs to come all the way up to now, which at that point was 2016, 2015, 2016. So that gave us a lot of freedom, right? Sort of okay, because all anthropologists do is study humanity. So, but it meant they didn't want it to just be here, carry some buckets, and this was what it was like. right? They didn't want it to be that kind of story. They wanted it to be about what is it like to be a human being living under a system that is all about, right, getting rid of your humanity, dehumanizing you. How did their ancestors continue to be human and practice their humanity within that system? And I think, I think that comes through in the exhibit. But so those are the kinds of questions that we have then had to come up with, think about what questions, how can we use archaeology to do that?
Yeah.
And what information do we need to answer those questions? So yeah, so the questions are really, they're fundamental, and it directs it sets the orientation for where the rest of the research project is going to go. So if I'm asking the questions, that's going to set them at a certain place, right? But if Leontine's asking the questions, that's going to set it in a different place, and I'm more interested in that place, right? I can always answer my question,
I would say, because I have my own opinion about this, but I would love to hear what you have to
Yeah.
say.
I want to
Do
hear
you
your
think
opinion.
that there are voices that are being overlooked even as you continue to, dive into the history of Montpelier? I think for me there was an absence of the children. I didn't see that a lot while I was there, but I was like, well, that they were obviously here. So like,
Yeah.
what was it like really for them, right?
Yeah.
And that was the piece that I didn't see. I saw images like that. That brick portrait of that child was kind of the thing that was like, oh yeah, there were kids here, right? I mean, that was
Yeah.
really, but I didn't see a lot of maybe historical artifacts around. I mean, you may have some, obviously, but
Right.
I didn't see
Yeah.
that.
Okay. It's from an artifact perspective. We don't have a lot,
Yeah.
right? And we had, I think, we have marbles. Those are on display in the I call it the jukebox because it looked the myth
Yeah.
busting thing. There's marbles in there. We like the writing slate and pencil. We use that as that is what then informs that component of the exhibit where when you peek your head up into the
Oh
loft
yeah.
and one of
Oh
the
yeah.
quarters, that
Yeah.
triggers the father teaching the daughter how to read.
That one.
Right. Yeah. Every time. It also always triggers when I'm trying to explain something to people, but that's
That too.
that's my problem. That mural of the boy made out of bricks that we excavated at the site was on the posters for the exhibit that was the
Yeah.
image, right? Was that the Ellen Stewart, the Ellen Stewart story is about a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
she's 13. She's a girl. And, but that story is so not something that should happen to a kid.
Right. I
Right.
didn't. Yeah. I mean, looking back.
And
Yeah.
and it's the narrator is an adult woman because it's a story that Ellen is telling,
Right.
as an adult. But that's a story about a little girl losing her family. Right. And in jail at the age of 13 in a slave jail because she, because the pearl, this attempt to escape on the pearl, didn't work.
Yeah.
She's 13. So, so I think sometimes the stories of kids gets kind of lost.
Yeah.
both in that it's hard to identify it. It's hard
Right.
to see, archaeologically, it's hard to see. They certainly didn't write a lot of things down, but the plantation would have been full of kids.
Right.
There would have been kids everywhere. That's just, I don't remember what the numbers are specifically, but at the highest point, there were 125 enslaved people at one time at Montpelier, and so many of those would have been children. Yeah. I mean, there's historical accounts talking about Dolly, kind of being followed around by, she had to give them candy and stuff. Also training them to take care of her.
That part, yeah, as well, training them to do the jobs that they will, be doing, honestly. And then some of them were already doing, right? Learning it. And again, at what age? I don't know. I mean, there was a lot more about just the kids that I wanted to know because they are a very big part of the plantation, right? They are what keeps plantations growing because having more kids means you have more labor because obviously after a certain year, as we talked about with the Clotilda, it was illegal to import any more Africans from
1808.
to the United States.
Courtesy of the U.S. Constitution.
So yeah, so because of that, you needed the kids. You needed them to have, more babies
It
to
was
keep it going.
the price of women, enslaved women, goes up following that moment, right? 1808.
Isn't that something?
Well, because you can't buy enslaved people off the boat anymore,
Mm.
and you see housing change, right?
Yeah.
It switches from dormitory style housing to single family housing because enslavers are trying to encourage family growth,
Yeah.
right? Which you're doing for a couple of reasons. One, families mean babies, which means more enslaved laborers, right? And you have kids, I have kids. Like, I'm not running away from my kids,
Yeah. Yeah. It's harder to leave. Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
My kids are everything
Yep.
to me, right? Like, I'm not leaving them behind. And it sure as hell is hard to do anything quietly with kids,
That's true. Yeah.
right? So, like, I can't imagine trying to get my twin 9-year-olds to like stay up all night while we run through the woods
Mhm.
Yeah.
quietly,
No. No. No.
right?
Gonna be.
Not happen, like, for weeks,
Mm-hmm.
not happening,
Yeah.
right? So, like, what's the safer choice for your family in an impossible, like, it's an impossible choice,
Right. Right.
right? Because you're not safe on the plantation either, because they could just be sold or you could be sold. But like, which option is going to give, and this is trying to help people see
Mm-hmm.
how there's no good choice. I
Right.
remember I was showing with these drawers in the lab. That's our study collection, so we use it to, when we're looking at artifacts, to have a collection of artifacts to compare to, so we can identify things. And we have one drawer that's full of architectural tools, so like hose, scythe, those kinds of things. I remember opening this, it was Descendants, and they leaned in, they looked at it, and they saw this, hoe blade. And the first thing she says, I would have killed James Madison, right? Would have just ended it. We would have been free, right? Just would have. And I was like,
Never that simple. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, like, think, right, like this, with that perspective, which she was most certainly not the first person to think of that
Oh,
option,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? I mean, Paul Jennings is shaving James Madison every morning. He's literally taking a razor blade to his enslaver's neck every single day,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't think sometimes he was like,
Right.
this could be over,
Right.
right? But that's not what would happen, right? This
Oh, no.
community knows, the enslaved people at Montpelier knows what happens when the enslaver dies, a suspicious death, because that's what happened to Ambrose Madison, James Madison's grandfather, right? He was
Right.
poisoned. What happened to the people that were found guilty of murder, right? 29 lashings for 2 of them, and 1 of them got hung, right? So the end result is not freedom. The end result is probably death, or you're getting sold,
Right. Well, death
right?
is, as we know, historically, is a kind of freedom that some people chose
Yeah.
over slavery, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's a tough choice, right? So it's not always as easy. And I think that, looking back, we can always say, well, I would have done, listen, I never want to find out. I never want to
Yeah.
be in a situation to find out. But yeah, it's layered. Just
Mhm.
just like our history, just like the dirt under our feet, it's layered. It's
100%.
never as black and white as we would like it to be. There's so many shades of gray. And I
Yep.
think that because there is a lot of history that is unknown, you don't really know. I mean, you have an idea of what it was like, but you don't really know, right?
Yep.
Because we weren't there. So it's
We were
it's
not.
always good to look